hopes of continuing on to cardiology one day. Prior to my heart transplant, I was on a lot of beta blockers, and public speaking was much easier back then. So please bear with me today. Lost my train of thought, sorry. So Wendy approached me to come and speak to you, and I was more than happy to. I've spoken at other events in the past, and normally I'm there to convince people to become organ donors. Luckily today, that is not what I'm here to talk about. I didn't know what to say. I have two pros here who will be following me. They've spoken at events like this before, whereas I have not. So I'm going to do my best, being my first time. First thing I'd like to say is, to me, it's not often you get to have lunch with heroes. The families who are here today are my heroes. You made no decision different than my donor family's decision that they made to save me. I am going to cry. If you're going to take pictures, please do them now. Thank you. I was ready to cry as soon as the choir started singing. Little background about me. I was 12 years old. I was the greatest soccer player in the world. Can't prove otherwise. But I started to fall behind. I couldn't run as long as my teammates could. So I was at a normal appointment with my doctor. A resident just like me thought he heard something. They sent me to a pediatric cardiologist, and the rest was history. I was told that day that I had to quit the 3 soccer teams that I was on. And at that point I was going to be a soccer pro, so I didn't really know what to do at the age of 12. I met my pediatric cardiologist, and I decided I was going to be like her. And at that point I set out the goal to become a pediatric cardiologist. That goal's changed the day I found out I needed a heart transplant. Then I decided I was going to be a physician who took care of heart transplant patients. As you can see, I'm easily persuaded. So I graduated college, St. Michael's College in Vermont, biology degree with plans to then apply to medical school. I went to see my pediatric cardiologist, told her at that point one staircase was too much, a large meal had become too much. The blood going to my stomach made me short of breath just because my heart couldn't compensate for eating that way. She sent me to a specialist at Tufts in Boston. I went there, did all this research. I was like, oh my God, they're gonna just shave my heart a little bit, increase the blood flow, it'll be perfect. He walks in the room, tells me, nope, you need a heart transplant. Shocked. What do you mean a heart transplant? I was just here for an ablation. At that point forward, my life took a change. Med school wasn't in the cards just yet. Sat home, waited for close to 2 years. Came to a point where waiting at home wasn't going to be good enough. So I had to decide, was I going to go to Tufts in Boston or Hartford Hospital and wait? I decided on Hartford because that's close to home for me. I spent 6 months waiting in the hospital, living in a CCU, or an HVCC, a heart ICU as you want to call it. The heart ICU at Hartford Hospital is not nice, like the one we have here at Baystate. The first time I saw Baystate CCU, I was like, where was this when I needed somewhere to live for 6 months? Just for an example, Hartford CCU, their toilets pull out from a cabinet under the sink. So anytime I needed to use the bathroom and family and friends were there, I had to ask them to leave the room. As you can imagine, at the age of 22, that can be a little bit embarrassing. So I was 22 when I first found out. I was 24 at the time I got my transplant. While I was waiting for my transplant, I decided I was going to write a blog. I called it Tales from the 10th Floor, because that's where I was staying at Hartford Hospital. So when Wendy asked me to speak today, I thought back. I wrote some pretty good blogs back then. So my blog actually won an award in the year 2012 for the best blog in Connecticut. So what I brought for you today is some excerpts from this blog. They are emotional. I cried last night reading them to see if they would be appropriate for today. To the donor families, a lot of them is addressed to you. I spent 6 months there. I had a lot of time to wonder what I would say to my donor and their families once I received this gift. The first post I'm going to read to you is from an excerpt that I wrote just after I found out I was going to get a heart transplant. Luckily, I was blogging because it's very rare that you get an insight into the patient's mind at that moment. The blog I'm going to share after that, actually, I wrote before this blog, but I'll tell you why I'm going to share it after when we get to it. So again, this starts off right after I was told I'm going to get my heart. News like the news I was given today hits you like a ton of bricks. My situation went a little something like this. My nurse Sue walks in and says, "Colby, I just got off the phone with the doctor and he says he has found the perfect heart for you." Naturally, my first reaction was disbelief. I've been here for so long and never felt like this day would actually come. I asked if she was joking. It was obvious she was not, and Sue does not joke. She is a straight shooter. Next came the waterfall that overcame my bottom legs and just let loose. So long have I waited to hear those words. Like I said, bear with me. After that shock and some continued crying and hugging of nursing staff, I had to call my mother. I spoke 2 words to her: "It's time." That was all she needed to hear, and she knew exactly what I meant. She composed herself better than expected, and quickly her and my father were on their way. After the next calls to my sisters to let them know the deal and that they could come visit, I sat alone. This is when the feeling I had expected hit me. Numbness. Too many emotions at once, just completely numb the senses. I was elated, scared, sad, and who knows what else, all at the same time. I was able to sit and think about what this meant for me. Running, hiking, going back to school, headed towards one day becoming a doctor. But I would be lying if I said there weren't scarier thoughts that crept in. I could not sit there and not think what this meant, that soon my heart would be taken from me. My chest sawed open and my heart cut out to be replaced by some strangers. The idea left an eerie feel floating in the room. That, however, needed to be pushed aside. This is a scenario I've waited for since September 23rd, 2010, when I was first listed for transplant. It was the happiness that needed to win out, and as the next few hours went on, it sure did. I was excited and ready to go. I found myself writing this at 3 in the morning. When I post this, I'm sure I will be getting the transplant, but at this moment I cannot help but worry. I've been here far too long and seen things go wrong and people's hopes get crushed when they thought it was their time. I do not want to live through that scenario. I could sleep now, but I'm unable to do so. Not because I'm too anxious, but because I'm too scared. The fear I feel now is not because of the insane surgery I'm about to deal with, but because I don't want to fall asleep and then wake up and be told bad news like I encountered last time I almost got a heart. Lastly, what came to mind during the rush of thoughts and emotions was a letter I wrote on this blog to my would-be donor. Again, I still don't know the donor, but I know they must be relatively young to be a perfect match for me. So I can't help the sadness that hits me with the thought of him or her losing their life. I can only imagine if their mother is anything like mine, what horror must be hitting her right now. I keep thinking back to my promise in that letter and how badly I want to fulfill it, to make the donor and their loved ones proud to see that their heart went to someone whose life was worth saving. And next will be that letter. So like I said, I wrote this letter in the hospital while I was waiting for a heart. This idea actually came to me from another heart transplant recipient. The letter is titled, "Dear John Doe," but at this time it was 2012 in the winter, and this letter could be written to any donor who would one day donate in the future. Dear John Doe, the truth is you might actually be Jane Doe, but regardless of gender, we are going to share a bond unlike anything ever imaginable. I don't know why, but in this cruel world that we live in, it is going to be your passing that allows us to form this bond. We will never meet, and I will never form this bond with you on a personal level, but I guess on more of a spiritual level. I do not know what will have led for your heart to become mine, but I know I will be more thankful for that than anything else in my life. Whether you decided to sign up to be a donor under license or online, or your loved ones make the decision after your passing, you're giving me a gift that you and only you will ever give me, and it will never be matched. I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, but even I can't grasp why it is that you must leave this world in order for me to continue on. Whether it's an accident, medical condition, or who knows what, a series of events is going to play out to bring about that day. My one wish for you, because whoever you are, I will not affect what occurs or when it will occur. I can only hope that when your time comes, it happens pain-free and with peace of mind. I really hope you will have the ability to stare down from some sort of heaven and see what good you have done and those you have saved by being an organ donor. So although you will never read this, unless by some coincidence you're a fan of my blog, I hope somewhere in your subconscious you feel and hear the thanks being sent from me to you. So I have been told without a heart transplant I wouldn't go on living much longer. Although I don't feel that way, I'll take my doctor's word for it. That being said, it means that you are giving me the gift of life. I can only imagine what someone should do with such a gift. I can promise you a few things I will do with my gift, though. I will never forget you. I will do my best to leave this world having accomplished things you can be proud of, and be happy that your heart was along with me for the journey. And lastly, I will do my best that when I leave this world, your loved ones will also be proud to see the things the person who carries your heart has accomplished. I tried to think of a million ways to close such a letter as this, and nothing comes to mind other than thank you.